is in the terms of more than the idea of a father and children, the idea of a husband and wife. Yes. And marriage itself. Well, marriage is what we're studying. This is what I keep saying, that everything that we do, for all that we are a spiritual religion, in fact, we are remarkably physical in how we approach. Everything we do is physical because we use the physical world to bring out the spirituality. This is the statement that I made, that it's called lovemaking, not sex, because sex by itself has no meaning. Lovemaking, you've just been mekadesh, sanctified, a physical act in the wedding. When you read Ladobit or you do Beirastech Yoilo, remember when that we talked about yesterday, right? I said, read the words. Don't forget about rushing too. Just take a few minutes of reading those sentences. I betroth you to me forever. I betroth you, what do you call it? With chesed and barach and tzedek, with righteousness. It's a remarkable words when you stop and you see it. Good morning, Jerry. How are you?
Morning.
All the religions, Judaism is the most theistic. It's the closest to Hashem. And it is,
according to other sects, we used to be called God intoxicated. So that's what the Goyim used to say about us, that we were God intoxicated.
they're right.
Because do you know what the difference here is? When we talk to the Rebbeinu Shalom, it's like a child talking to a parent. Think about it. You're not supposed to call your parent, hey, you.
Right.
You don't talk to it. Yet, what's the first thing we say by every bracha? Baruch Ata. Blessed are you. Why don't we go Baruch Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam? Blessed is God. Because when you're doing that, you're turning him into the third person. Blessed is God. No. Baruch Ata. Blessed are you. There's no third person. This is me talking to the Rebbeinu Shalom, you. When you think of that, it changes everything.
And it connects with what we're saying here. If we're learning marriage.
We're all learning it in a certain way. Anyways, it's Friday, so we don't kill time. Yeah. Right? So let's get started.
And you have to go shopping at Aroma, so you got a list already.
And Grove today, actually. So and you have to be careful. Jerry's gonna get me into trouble. Stopping in Roma, then in Grove. But what can I do? The truth is, the prices are slightly better, and the food is somewhat better. I mean, what am I supposed to say? In Aroma, the takeout in Aroma is very good. Really is. Really is. Anyways, so let's begin. We are holding on Daf Vav 6A1. David, come on, wake up over there. 681. 681. It's so beautiful to see everybody with their own Gemaras. That's it. Very good. 6A1, we are in the right column. The right column by Iboyelahu Charufose Mahu. What does that mean, Charufose? Which the number 9 on the bottom will tell you that it means in Aramaic, in essence, designated or singled out. Okay? And it's used by a Shifcha Kananis, by a maidservant that is a Kanani, where it says in the Chrefes Le'ish, she's designated to a man.
Charufa.
Yeah.
Like
Egla Charufa. Same idea. Calf that's connected, singled out. So, the question is, you are my charufa, you are my singled out. Is that a language of marriage? Toshma, Titania, you are my charufa, she is betrothed. She came be Yehuda in Judea, Kairin la Arusa charufa. They called the betrothed a charufa. Be Yehuda have a ruba dalma. And so the basic question is, Judea, right? Is it the majority of the world? It's a little dot in the gray. It's a little dot in the big scheme of the thing. What? Just because it's by Judah that way doesn't mean that everywhere else you can use that language. Hakikama. This is what the Brisa means to say. Ha'ima charufa semikudeshes. If you say you are my charufa, you're engaged. Shenem avihi shifka necharepes leish. So this canonic maidservant is designated to a man. Va'oid, and also it happens to be the Yehuda karin la arusa charufa. They called her an arusa charufa. Choraf. It's a disaster. It's a disaster. Right. The Yehuda va'oid likrai.
I understand what
In
you said.
Yiddish, they say, "Oh, it's such a shanda na charpa."
Oh,
Right, exactly. That's where it really comes from. So, okay, be Yehuda va'oid likra. So why would the Brisa say in Yehuda and the pasuk? What's the right way of saying a thing? A pasuk, and then by the way, this is how they do it in Yehuda. Elahachi kama ha'omer charufa bi Yehuda mikudeshes. If you say you are my charufa while you're standing in the Judean, you're betrothed. She came be Yehuda kain la arusa charufa. But I have no proof for the rest of the world whether the word charufa can be used, because as you well pointed out, in fact, the connotation of choraf is a shadav and a charpa. It's the opposite of marriage. Okay, so therein lies it's the rest of the world we don't have a clarity. Now, let's go. Before we said miyuchedesli, you're singled out for me. Miyuchedesli, you're designated for me. These are all good languages of marriage. But Mayaskin, what are we talking about? If we're talking about where he had not previously had a conversation of hers, she did not have a conversation of her with her regarding Kiddushin or Gerushin, marriage or divorce, right? That even if the words were to qualify as a legal Kiddushin, the Kiddushin would not be valid. It would not be an engagement. Minoya data makamala. How would she know what he's saying to her? There's no way to connect the words that he's using. You're singled out to me. You're designated to me, that it should be talking about marriage or divorce if there wasn't a preamble prior to that. Doesn't that make sense to anybody?
makes sense. Is there a preamble?
You would normally say, you talk to a girl, let's get engaged.
Okay.
You might say, we're going to get divorced. Things are not working out. Let's get a divorce.
As a preamble,
No, preamble for these languages, these words that are opaque. No, of course, once again, we don't allow any of this. We've taken out all the opaqueness. But at a time, really, if we have to understand, we're dealing at a time when Klal Yisrael was spread out throughout the nations. The wandering Jew had begun. So people's languages began to change. Their connotations began to change. So let's use the thing. We call the trunk of a car the trunk of a car. What do they call it in England? The boot. We call an elevator an elevator. They call it the lift. Right? Just keep right on going. We call it pants. They call it trousers. Right? Again, that's the same language. Let alone if it's what he called. You got to get yourself. You got to go order yourself a Gemara.
Okay.
That's very important, because then you can write the thing. You can have the shul order it for you.
You know what? I have like all my boxes of books I have no shelving, so they're all in. I don't know if I have Kiddushin books, so I'll go get. Is it Judaica store?
No. I'll tell you what you do. You have the office, have the shul, have the front office will order it, and you'll pay the shul. That's how you do it. Kiddushin. It's two. So this 100%, of course. Goes not on your level. You should get it. Good. Anyway, so further. So Maya Skina, what are we talking about? We are holding Dabavam and Aleph, working our way. We're around Toisvis Mishum. B'maya skina. She wasn't prior talking to her about marriage or divorce. So how do I know that these words of miyuchedes or miyuedesli, right? You are singled out to me, you are designated to me, have anything to do with marriage? How would she know what you're talking about? Elo medaber ima liske gita v'kedusha. He was talking with her with regard to the whole idea about getting married or divorced. And alpha gabdaloy omalo nami. And therefore, even if he were now to hand her money and not sending anything to her at all, the Kiddushin would also be valid, right? Because here, if I'm talking to her about marriage and I give her money, it's clear that the money that I'm giving her is towards marriage. It wouldn't matter whether I said the words miyuchedesli or muedesli. You are singled out for me, you are designated for me. So one of these words, what's the case? So the Tanya, because we learned in the Mishnah, okay, the Mishnah said, if a man was speaking to a woman about the situation on hand, marriage or divorce, and then gave her a get or something for a Kiddushin, some money, and did not explain the purpose of the action, Rav Yosi, it's Geduk. It's enough. You were talking about marriage. You gave her money now for marriage. No problem. Rav Yehuda, no, just because you were talking about it doesn't mean anything. You must explain what you've just done. We are now on 683. Daddy, we are holding by the Tosfos Mishum. See, Shmuel, halacha ki Rabbi Yosef. The halacha is like Rabbi Yosef that no explicit declaration is needed. Once I'm talking around the Indian, I'm talking around the subject, everybody understands what's going on here. Okay? So, therefore, why do I need to worry about these words of miyuchedesli, singled out or designated, if we're dealing with it when we're talking about the situation, which doesn't require any words at all? So Sakti Gemara, Amri, they say, that means the guys in the yeshiva, Liyoila Medaber Imal is King Kiddushin. You were talking about the situation. And if you would give her money and keep silent, Hachanami, it would be a kosher, it would be Mikudeshes, according to Rabbi Yosi, because you were talking about it, and then when you gave her the money, you got tongue-tied and you didn't say anything, it's fine. But here, what are we talking about? The in which he gave her the money after discussing marriage, and then he continued talking using these opaque expressions. And the question is, the Kiddushin Kamalei, since he didn't have to utter these opaque words, and he did, he's saying it in order to betroth her.
He gave her the money first.
He gave her the money, and then he says,
They were not talking about marriage.
No. They were talking about marriage. Here's the rule. You're talking about marriage, and he gives her the money. If he doesn't say another word, the assumption is the money was for marriage, and that's it. But now, that means you don't have to say anything more. Here again, second case then. They were talking in marriage, and then he handed her the money. But instead of shutting up, you know what he says? Hareyat miyuchedes. You're my miyuchedes. Or you're my designated.
After he
Gave her the money. After he didn't have to say anything. He added words. Okay?
Why is that opaque?
It's opaque. No, it's not opaque. Because here's the Gemara. And the question is, Hani lishli Kiddushin Kamalei. That means you were continuing really on your conversation you were having before, and it's got to do with Kiddushin. Oy Dilma Limalacha Kamalei. That's what makes it the thing. Maybe he was saying, listen, we were talking about marriage, that's all fine. But while we're at it, we got to talk about work. I'm hiring you. You're becoming my worker.
What language did he use?
You You're singled out for me to be my best worker.
You fed it,
Yeah.
He would say, The Kodesh.
No. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact you're talking about a marriage. If he had kept his mouth shut when he gave her the money, then it would be, we would say, oh, it's got to do with what we were just talking about. But now he added a new variable.
He's continuing with fatal language.
It's right with some language. You are designated to me. You are my singled out for me. What does that mean? Do I say it's really a continuation of the previous conversation? He just didn't use the right words. Hareya Mikudeshes. He used other words, and therefore they are engaged. Or no? That says the Gemara Teku.
Was there time spent
No,
between the giving the money and saying those things?
Teku. We leave it alone. Let me give you an example. My Rebbe Rapam, Zechenu L'Bracha, used to give a shir every once in a while on nibble peh, words you shouldn't be using, a Jew shouldn't be speaking. One year he talked about the word whatchamacallit in Yiddish. Visat avot is whatchamacallit. What kind of word is whatchamacallit? So after the shir, the guys went over to Rapam. And as the story goes, they asked him, Rebbe, that's not nibble peh, that's not bad words. You're talking, you forget what you're going to say. So what do you say? Whatchamacallit. Right. So what Rapam said? If you don't know what to say, don't say it. That's what makes it nibble pad. That's what makes it words. In other words, over here, if you don't know what to say, don't say it. You were talking about marriage, give her the money, be quiet. The fact that you're now adding in a new variable that's opaque, now it's your intent is not clear. Your intent is not clear. Now we got to take you. Very good. Further.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if you ask the girl, were you willing to
Marry.
be Mekudesh to him?
And
If she said, yeah, then it would be okay.
Wouldn't.
Why not?
Because a man has to take a woman.
No, he did. He gave her the money.
Maybe he gave it to her for.
When you accepted that money, did you have in mind to accept the
That's
condition?
our question. But you would
If she
talk
says
about,
yes,
but we don't know what his das was, because he kept saying the words. You are designated to me. You had it to me.
Yocheret means you're my favorite. You're
Right.
my special.
Right.
So I think
You're my
that
best.
word,
You're
from
best.
what we learn, I think
It's marriage.
it means he's married.
Right. So
Yeah.
the Gemara here is saying not so simple.
But before he just looks at her and says,
Not married. They were talking in marriage. If he had kept quiet and gave her the money right after talking about marriage, it was their marriage. The moment we keep saying this over and over and over again. Let me repeat. Words matter. The moment you throw in that whatchamacallit, you've just made it unclear. Daddy, you see, at the end of the day, it's not what she thinks. It's what was he thinking, and why did he add in these extra words? Who told him to speak up? Siyag lachachma shtika. Right? The gates of wisdom are silence. There you go. So Zakti Gemara Vaita. Gufa. We are holding that Vav Amid Aleph 683. You're okay over there? We're holding next to Taisus just for your purpose. Vav is next to Taisus that starts with the word chicane. Okay? Gufa. You okay, David? Yeah. What do you call it? If a man was speaking to a woman about marriage or divorce, and he gives her a bill of divorce or money for Kiddushin, and doesn't say anything, he's now silent, he's tongue-tied. Rabbi Yossi Amidaya, it's enough. You were talking about marriage, you gave her the money, even though you didn't say this was for marriage, it's assumed. Rabbi Yehuda, no, you still got to explain. It's not enough. What you were talking about before was before. Now you're giving her the money. Explain. And this ruling of Rabbi Yossi that the previous discussion suffices is only if they were dealing in the same type of conversation. But if they had been talking about marriage, Daddy, And then they turned around and they started talking about Rosh Hashanah, right? No good. Even according to Rabbi Yossi. And they're dealing in that thing. Kitanoi. Like, and this is really machlokes tanoi. Rabbi said, this principle that's speaking about marriage applies only when they are still dealing with the same topic of conversation just prior to the giving. Rabbi Loza Rabbi Shimon in fact, Rabbi Loza, the son of Rabbi Shimon, is a mekel. Like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is always a mekel. If you were talking about marriage, and even if you switch the conversation, right? What he called when the Kiddushin is chal. He loved my dad to come away, but wait a minute, how could that be? If you switch conversations to Rosh Hashanah, how does she know you're going back? You're giving her the money back because of marriage. So doesn't mean you went off to Rosh Hashanah. You were talking about marriage. How about if we get married, right? What would it be like if we get married? And then you start talking about other marriages that took place recently within the community. And then you circle around. It says Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon. That's okay. Okay? Here we go. Zakti Gemara Vaita. Amar Rabbi Yehuna Amar Shmuel. Halachic Rabbi Yossi. The halach is like Rabbi Yossi. If you were talking before about marriage or divorce, and now you give over the money or the get, and you don't explain, it's good and it facilitates a marriage or a divorce.
Even if you say after that something else,
After you give.
after you give, right?
Once you give and you kept your mouth shut. Remember.
But then you say something.
After.
You say,
So what?
No. If you do it immediately after you give it to her, no, that would be problematic.
So why'd you give her the money?
even
in the
if
first
it's
place?
Yeah, that would be problematic because again, you added in a variable.
Take me back a little bit. So why did he give her the money in the first place?
That's got nothing to do with his giving her a present. He likes hanging with her.
She was a maidservant too. She should be.
Right, he's giving her a bonus. Look, David, without realizing it, has jumped on top of a very important piece here. We do not spend time looking for motives. Sometimes we look at the action itself. This idea that you always have to know what the motive is behind the action is not the way law works. First thing is, what is the law? If we're going to start dealing with the motive, then every human being has a different type of motive. The thought processes of it.
But she thinks about, okay, he's giving me money. What is that?
Okay.
What is her motive? And then
Okay.
tell me, so what is she supposed to work with?
Okay, that's a different story.
I'm going to, I think I'm going to get engaged.
She thinks I am engaged. You know what? She comes over and says, I'm not sure if I got engaged. That's the problem.
So there you go.
There's the problem. There's the problem.
Don't look at any other person, but I'm not so sure about you.
I'm right. I'm putting it. Yeah, okay, exactly.
Any action basically
Has a motive, but the moment that it's opaque, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, of course it's
So why don't you ask them?
What
Yeah, ask him.
theoretically, so that we're trying to say is,
Ask her.
we had this before. You're not her.
He's supposed to be the one who initiates the
Right,
asking.
you're talking not. You don't ask her. You ask him.
You ask him, but you
Let me
give him
ask
the
you.
money.
So the,
Well,
answer,
what did
so
you
the
have?
answer becomes because he went to Medina Sayam. You can't ask him.
Gave her the money, said, "Ab miyuchedet."
And then he went off on a trip. Actually, that is exactly the point. He was leaving the next day. He wanted to hold her in place.
Right.
So he got her engaged. Or did he?
She's already thinking.
Right. Yeah, but you need a language of assurity.
That's correct. What we're saying. That's what this whole argument. So Rabbi Yossi says, if you were talking about marriage and you gave her the money and you didn't say anything else, it's good. But if you threw in a variable, it might not be good.
But it is.
I didn't say that. He said something else. You are singled out for me. You are designated me. You are designated.
Just by changing the language.
Yeah, you did. You left, made it opaque.
It's just not counted.
No, maybe it did count. How can you just not count?
If you broke the rule. The rule-
No, but maybe he gave at the end of the day, he gave her money, and they weren't talking about marriage. But his final words messed things up.
No strings attached.
You have to set up for witnesses anyways, right?
Sure, there were guys there
Okay, so why didn't they ask us this way?
because he went off to Medina Sayyam. Bought a plane. He had to run to the airport and catch a plane. That's it.
So that the witnesses just have to be in the room, or they have to be intentionally listening.
They have to be there, and they see what happens, and they say, "Okay, we witnessed the action." That's it. Who are the two? Like we always say at a wedding, who are the two most important people at a wedding? The witnesses,
Oh,
not the rabbi. None of the rabbis.
they're
They're all
a
ex.
woman.
They're all ex. Outside of the chassan and kallah.
Okay.
Two most people on the outside are the two witnesses. The witnesses for putting on the ring, and the witnesses standing outside the door by the yichud.
They had to sign something, right?
That's somebody else. That's the Eidik Subu.
Oh, okay. Oh,
But the Eidik Kiddushin are the most important. Anyway, further.
So basically, so you're leaving your in limbo.
Correct. You are. It's taken.
So in order to remarry,
She has to get a divorce.
she has to get a get from this
And they
guy.
say if we're really married, we're divorced. And if we weren't married, it's no problem. But the problem with getting a get is what, Daddy? There's now a reyach a get. There's now a smell of a get, and she can't marry a guy.
You know,
All right. Well, then, she falls in love with a guy. There's a song, "Don't fall in love with a cowboy." Right?
Oh,
In
yeah,
this
yeah.
case, it is don't fall
Mama
in.
don't let.
Right.
I have it, Mama don't let you.
Said, my mama, don't let your children grow up to be cowboys. Waylon Shannon and some friend, what's it? I think, how do I even know this? Amar Avuna, Amar Shmuel, halacha ki Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, that if you were discussing before, it's all good. Amar le Rabbi Yemil, Rabbi Ashi, ve'elahodi, Amar Rabbi Ashi, Amar Shmuel, kol she'eni yedei b'tiv gittin b'kedushin. Anybody who does not know the laws of divorce and kedushin, this is a very important line. Lo yehei lo Isaac imoy, should not be dealing with them. Any rabbi who's not an expert in the subject cannot deal in the situation. Afilu lo shemile dehod, afilu lo shemile hoder Avuna Shmuel. Is this ruling even according to this, what Rav Huna and Rav Shmuel, that the halacha follows Rabbi Yossi? Amalei ain't chanami. Even that. You have to be an expert in every single thing, including this factor of Rabbi Yossi, that if you're talking about the situation and then you give it to her silently, it is mikudesh. In fact, this is very, very true today, especially with regard to divorce. It is only a Rav who is an expert on the subject that can issue divorces. There are Rabbanim who, this is one of, that there are select Rabbanim that they're called into to officiate divorces. Semi-higher Rav, for example, to officiate divorces. Stama Rav cannot officiate a divorce. Because what we just learned. Well, actually, after a divorce, everybody calls out Mazel Tov.
Really?
Yeah, because now that you're single again, Mazel Tov, then you should find your next shidduch right away. Always. Certainly by the Chassidim. That's what by the Chassidim they say. Yep.
It's a mitzvah, but it's not something you desire. But once you've done it, you perform
You have
the
performed the mitzvah. That you don't have to do, of course. But says the Gemara, "V'chein begerish." Yeah.
Part of what?
הידיים בדורות שמייתר ישראל וזהו עובס שאינו יוכל לזכר. It's if
you're a judge,
if you're not an expert and you deal with
these situations,
you might be matir an error, somebody who
you might permit somebody who's not permitted.
right.
So let me give you the example.
That's a sin that you cannot correct.
Because
Because
the
that person
child
gets
is-
married.
and has a child.
The child be a mamzer, it's finished.
Now, having said
Yeah,
that,
it's,
after World War II, the Rabbanim were very busy with the Konos and found every which way to marry the girls off, relied on just anecdotal stuff, though there were individual situations, Daddy, where the original husband came back many years later.
Yeah, there was a situation where some of the rabbis who were matter of women were conservative or reform
No.
rabbis.
I'm not talking about that. I'm
No,
talking
we're
about the
fine.
Sat. I'm talking about Rav Moshe. I'm talking about the Satmaru. Specifically, I'm talking about Rabbi Yosef Stein.
I don't think so,
Okay,
because it says that about tzaddikim.
I understand that. Nonetheless, it happened.
Were they mamzer with the kid then, or?
We don't look. That's why after Mashiach, when Mashiach comes, Mashiach's not asking about it.
It just makes me nervous because then that could be someone. I mean, I don't have to worry now because.
Not here, guys. Stop.
Okay.
You don't worry about it. You have to understand something. We were dealing in times. Forget the Holocaust. Let's go back to the times when this Gemara was written. We are dealing with the true, at that point, the second Holocaust. The first Holocaust was by the first base of English. Second base was by the Churban Bayeshim. 2 million people were killed in Beitar. The blood ran out of the city for 2 years.
What was Beitar, the one where we say Tova Metiv?
Yes. And by the first base of Mikdash, in Zugadra, killed 900,000 Jews to console the blood of Zechariah that was bubbling on the ground. You'll remember the story.
So something was bad was done to Zechariah, right?
It's killed by the Jews. And his blood was sitting in Zechariah was a Kohen, and he was killed in the base of Mikdash. And his blood didn't sink away, it bubbled. For 200 years it bubbled. When he figured that out, he said, I will bring him peace. And he started killing and killing and killing. When he reached 900,000 Jews. Who was the Babylonian
Oh.
general?
The Buzaradon,
He said,
general of the
Zechariah, do you want me to wipe out the entire Jewish people? Will you then be at peace? And then the blood stopped bubbling.
This Roman general or Babylonian general, he was on the side of the
he became Jewish.
He became Jewish. He got so freaked out by
And they
this.
killed
He
him.
said, if Madach for one person, God had it ordained that I should kill 900,000 to appease him. Me who killed 900,000 Jews, right? I'm just saying what he said. I killed 900,000 people. What's going to happen to me? So he ran away and became Jewish. Anyway, so
He had that
What was his
situation.
name when he was Jewish?
He had that situation.
doesn't matter.
The Israeli pilot. Remember the Israeli pilot, Ron Arad? He was shut down in Lebanon doing, and nobody knows if he's alive or not.
And that's why,
And they don't want to say, how these Arabs are.
that's why,
That's why I was on a good
right? So now,
Could you believe that it was at this point?
so
20, 50 years.
the question
don't know.
becomes like this. In those period of times, the Jews were spread to all 4 corners of the world. And their families were ripped apart and all. In the Holocaust, they got to the concentration camps. The men went one way, the women went the other way. Nobody was seen. I have how many great grandparents? I think I have 7 great grandparents, if I'm correct. My father has 3. And from my mother's side, I have over there as well. So I either have 6 or 7 great grandparents lying in the back in Auschwitz-Birkenau. But do I really know that they're there? Did anybody see them die? Do we even know the exact date of their yard site? We picked the day.
It's not in the air.
We picked the date. So Berexaz, was taken on the 40th day of the Yom.
What do you say, Bennett?
Berexaz. So that's when the yard site of Berexaz is held. We have the first day of Shavuos. My father has yard site. On the 11th day of Sivan, have yard site again. And somewhere in the middle of there, I've got a few more, and some we just don't know. This is yesterday's news, just yesterday. 23 years before I was born. That's it. So I am not flippant about the Aguna situation. And nor were the Rabbanan of the time. They had what we call rice appliances, big shoulders that they put on themselves in Paskin Shad. My father's right. Tzaddik Paskins, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes sure he has Siyata D'Shmaya, that he passes correctly. But again, I'm just telling you the reality that stuff happens and you work around it. Why do you work around it, everybody? Because the world that we live in sometimes is a mess. So be it. But the world has to continue because the eternal people have to go forward. And that is why it says, a Mashiach will come, he will not ask for lineage. Further, V'chein v'gerish, and so too with divorce, the bottom of 684. And we have to finish today by 10:15 because I got to go shopping, and then I want to go with my father to see if we can get TSA pre-check. V'chein v'gerish, v'chein v'gerish. V'nosan lo gita v'amalon. He hands his wife a divorce and he says to her, Hareyat mishulachas, you're sent away. Hareyat migureshes, you're divorced. Hareyat muteres l'chol Hareyu migureshes, therefore she did divorced. She did nothing like that. Hareyat ben chayrin. Clearly, if a man then would give a divorce and say, you are now a free woman. 6b1. Lo yamav lo klum. He said nothing because a married woman is not shadow. She was never not free. She always was free. So you saying, I'm giving you your freedom now, you're a ben chayrin. That's the language that you tell your maidservant. That's not the language you use for your wife, so she's not divorced.
That's how you read the get also.
Well, that's how he told. He doesn't even say that. Just that's what he said to her. Harei at bas chayrin.
Yeah, but it says here, no son lo gito.
Yeah, va'oma, and it says va'oma lo. Yeah, I don't know about that.
Because if it's in the get, it says Ariat Mugureshes.
Doesn't matter. His words will have overridden.
Think so?
That from here, and from here, if we're going to take the Gemara the way it's written, which is, I gave the get and said to her, and we've been talking about saying the whole time, Harei ben bas chayrin, you are a free woman, lo yama v'lo klum, it's nothing. And to use the words over here, since look at number 1 on the bottom on 631, since a married woman is not enslaved, it is inaccurate to characterize a divorced woman as one who is free.
Oh no, look at Rashi.
Yeah, Rashi says, Rashi it says, Oma, which means it says in the bill of divorce itself.
Because if it would say in the get, Ariat Mugureshes, so what do you care what he says?
So the Geresh Sheim Kosev Loget Shein Zeh Loshen Gerish. That's what he said. But I want to see if Tosis disagrees because I know this is not.
It makes sense.
You're saying that by saying that, you're counteracting the get, now the get.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But my father is being from, and Rashi is saying that's what he wrote in the get.
Oh, so if he wrote it, then it's fine. Oh, he wrote.
You are divorced.
He wrote
Ariyat bas chayrin. You're a free woman.
You word again, somehow you word it, you know.
So that's what my father is saying. That the get would be good.
that would be good for Meshucha, get Meshucha.
Right. Well, now go the other way. Amalei l'shivchasai. If a guy says to his shivcha kananis, to his kanani maidservant, slave woman, harei at muteres l'chol adam. You are hereby permitted to any man. Lo yamaloi klum. Because that's the language of a wife being free. She right now is not a free woman. So since she was not a free woman, you have to first you get your freedom, and then you become mutter to other men. So we got a third case now. You are onto yourself. Mahu. He's merely relinquishing his rights to her produce. He's saying, you support yourself and I'll support myself. and we're no longer sharing checking accounts. Oy Dilma, Legabri Kamala, he's terminating the marriage completely. Amalei Ravina Lerabashi Toshma. Titania, Gufa shall get Shichro, the essence text of a document of emancipation is Hare At Ben Chayrin, you are a free man, or Hare At La'atzmcha, you are unto yourself. Hashto Ma Evet Kanani to come to Kani Leila Gufe. Now, an Evet Kanani, who while he's a slave, his entire body belongs to who? To the master. Nonetheless, ki amalei harei atlahatzva, when you say you are to yourself, legamri kamala, he's freed completely. Isha de laikanale kufa, a woman whose very essence is not owned by her husband. She's not shadow. Her body is not owned. She's an individual in her own right. Like Oshken, shouldn't it certainly the words you are yourself, you are onto yourself should certainly be a good language of divorce. By the way, this is important.
I feel like that's contradictory because you're saying that you free a slave that way, but a slave isn't analogous to a wife and to a husband.
We're picking that wording, not the Ben Chayrin wording. You didn't say you are now a free woman. She was always a free woman.
All right.
But you are now to yourself, meaning that we have nothing to do. We're not in together. We're not sharing checkbooks.
But you're
or
saying
nothing.
that same wording works for the bench.
But that works for both.
Okay. You're saying
That is a terminology that could work for both. That's what this time is saying.
okay. That makes more
I mean,
sense. I thought they were making contrast.
No. Good question. No. Amalei Ravina Lerabashi. Amala Abdai Ainli Asik B'Chamai. Well, let's do the next question because it might answer the question. Amalei Ravina Lerabashi. Amala Abdi Ainli Asik B'Chamai. I have no dealings with you. That's what he tells him. What's the meaning? Me Amrin and Ainli Asik B'Chamai. I have no dealings with you. Legamri Kamalei. I'm setting you free. I'm not going to make you work anymore. You're free of me. Okay, so now, Daddy, what was your question?
I'm trying to read
To thread the needle.
No, to take it the way people are. If you're going to divorce your wife, you probably had a whole either a chronic fight, or you had a discussion about it. You don't go suddenly out of the blue and say, "Oh, you are for yourself." Then you have to worry. What did you mean? You
Accept.
What?
We're not Torah.
Normal people act like that.
The Torah Kedosha said a man could divorce his wife against her will.
Right.
You know what against her will is? She's in the kitchen. He walks in, says, "By the way, here's the shopping list. And when you finish doing the shopping, you guess what? Here's your divorce." In the Minat Torah, not Midrabana. Minat Torah, that's again.
Without witnesses, then?
What?
If you wrote
Even if it's without witnesses.
it
again.
does have to be written though, right?
What's written, right? Gives her again. Yeah, gives her again.
That's not fair. That's not total.
Again, it doesn't apply today.
That's a very extreme case.
Correct.
But if you take it the way normal people are,
Daddy, just finished Masetas Gittin. Was anything normal about that?
What again? Divorce?
Yeah, the one where it says you are now hereby divorced as long as you don't go to your father for 10 years.
Or you flawed the,
Or you slug.
No, that's just to say that you shouldn't make a condition of
Daddy,
it.
we spent 25 dafim on conditions. We came to the end of the Gemara. The Gemara said, now that we learned 25 dafim, don't make any conditions. But first you have to learn about the rules of conditions. I'm making a point, Daddy. You're absolutely correct. That's why, Daddy, I'm not blowing you off. I'm actually showing you that in reality,
But I'm saying if there was
Daddy, you know
an
what happens?
indication,
Daddy, you know what happens today? There are plenty of indications. And the guy says, sure, I'm showing up, give me $100,000 and I'll divorce It happens
This is
today.
Orthodox Jews do that?
All people do that.
Right, I understand outside of.
I know a lot of people do. Unfortunately, what divorces are rarely cleaned. What did the Gemara at the end of Kiddushin say? The Mizbeach cries, weeps. It doesn't say cries, it says weeps, boicha, weeps. We have to listen, let's keep going. But you got, again, in all of these Gemaras that we're moving through here, especially all the way to Daf Yud, okay, you have to take into, Daddy, this is very important. This is the theory of law. Because we're going to get to, right now we're dealing with kesef, money. We're going to get to shtar. And more importantly, we're going to get to bia, cohabitation. Which, as you all know, we have not engaged anybody through cohabitation for thousands of years. Okay? But the Gemara is going to go into it in some very graphic detail in some sense.
Instead of giving something of value, if you do be
That's the first Mishnah. But so we have to discuss it. What would you say, Daddy? Normal people are not having a wedding call, and everybody there's going to be so that they can get it on in the wedding call. But according to the Gemara, yes, they did.
So you would know that. What song did we sing back in the 60s? My condition was in. Remember there was a song like this?
I was wondering what the yichud. So I thought that's what it was for.
No, we talked about yes very quickly. Yeah. The yichud rule is in essence finishing nisuin. Erisin is the ring. Chuppah, which is the bridge from Kiddushin or Erisin to full-fledged marriage, is the chuppah. You're taking her under your tent. Then you go to the yichud rule. You are now, what does yichud mean? Alone. Yachid, one. Became one. And you have the witnesses stand outside the door. Before the chassan and kal go into the room, the witnesses have to come into the room, make sure nobody else is in the room. They look under the table, in the closet, the whole 9 yards. Then they go out, they lock the door.
And that's bia? That's where
It's bia doesn't take place there.
Oh.
No, in 2 minutes, of course not. In fact, they're starving.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I was very old fashioned. We didn't do it.
Explanation. These are good questions. These are the questions you're supposed to ask. You're in there long enough that the theoretical bia could have taken place. So that now her assumption has changed. In Hebrew, chazaka has now changed from being not just mikudish erison, but she's now considered a full-fledged wife.
Just like if that's what they have to do for sota.
Yeah, it was
Jump 10
to see what condition my condition was in.
Got it.
It's similar, like the same chazaka that would take place with the sota. Like she was in there long enough that it could have.
That's the same exact thing.
Not in a bad way, but
how many witnesses? Also two.
Yeah.
There you go. Further.
Doesn't it take only one to
Afterwards. To establish the new chazaka, to establish a chazaka, an assumption you always need to. Okay, further. Okay, if one sells his goyish slave to a guy, what's the rule? We all know this, right? This slave, right, had mitzvahs killed like who? Hello? Right, had mitzvahs like a woman. Like a nush. He was already keeping mitzvahs. He goes free, meaning that the first master who sold him has to redeem him and then give him a bill of emancipation. He only has to rewrite a bill of emancipation when he didn't give him an original document at the time he sold him to the guy. If he wrote a document at the time, that is his emancipation. What does it mean, a document? That when you run away from your new master, right, which means I'm telling you to run away, I'm working this 2 ways. I'm getting money for you from the guy, right? And I'm getting money from you like from the guy. And listen, as soon as you get there, run away. This is very similar. Do you guys remember the only in this stuff, Yomi? The good, the bad, and the ugly, right? If you remember how it began, right? There's Eli Wallach on the horse, and he's getting hung. And then there's Clint Eastwood, this is when he's better to get hung. And he shoots the rope and they run off. And they do this, let's say, for 3-4 towns, and they keep getting the reward and all that. Same thing over here. So, exactly the same story. Now you know where they got all their cases. So,
I gotta see that movie.
I know we'll start with a fistful of dollars and a few dollars more, and then you do the good. To the spaghetti westerns. When you run from the guy, I have no more dealings with you. Since this has that same language, it's good enough to be here in the document of emancipation, 6B2.
How is he allowed to run away from the wife?
Because he wasn't being allowed to. It's not a sale. The slave was not sold because the Jew was never allowed to sell it to the guy.
This is a Jewish slave then.
No, it's a Goyish slave that
He
belonged to
became
the
Jewish.
Jew. The moment a Jew buys a Goyish slave, the Goyish slave gets a bris milah, goes to the mikveh, and has mitzvahs like a woman. And when he's freed, he becomes a full-fledged Jew. You'll go up in holiness, never down.
So you can't marry your
let's
girl.
say you want to. I mean, obviously when he's a
So
slave, he has no choice. So, but afterwards when he's free,
He's Jewish.
I mean, that's good for.
No, he's Jewish.
But he might not. Will he follow?
Well, the better word. That's why a Goyish slave went to yeshiva. The Goyish slave needed to go to yeshiva. He needed to know what mitzvahs to keep as a woman and all that. He didn't work Shabbos. He didn't work Yom Tov. You couldn't overwork your Goyish slave.
But I'm saying, why as a woman, not a man?
Because that's where he's up to. He's not a full-fledged Jew.
He doesn't do like go to the mikveh for the same reason the
Oh,
woman.
because he's a man.
Yeah.
The Aruch HaShulchan explains why does he get a bris then?
Yeah.
Because he says the truth of the matter is women are mechuyev of bris. They just can't have it because they don't have the anatomy. It doesn't allow it. But if theoretically the women's anatomy had it, they would have a bris. So the Eved gets a bris. Aruch HaShulchan writes this. Yeah. Amar Abaya Hamikadesh b'milva eged mikadeshes. If one attempts to engage a girl through a loan, she's not betrothed, right? But if he betroths her with the benefit of a loan, in other words, he says you get to collect the loan that I got from somebody else, that I gave somebody else. Reuben lent money to Shimon, and then Reuben tells Leah, I'm giving you the rights to that loan.
She doesn't have to pay it back.
No. The original one is something else. He says like this, he gives her a loan. He said,
He does.
what? Yeah, but he's in the first case, he goes like this, I'm supposed to give you a pruta. I don't have it. Right? I'm giving you a loan. Right? Become Chimuni with the loan that I lent you. In other words, this is the case. Before they were engaged, he gave her $100 and she had to pay it back. He says, become what it called. He doesn't give her actual money. He forgoes repayment of the loan. That's no good because you didn't give money. You have to give something now. Here, you merely didn't take back. That's no good.
But you at some point gave her $100.
Before, that was his regular loan.
Oh, and it wasn't.
Now you want to forgive the loan, and for that forgiveness, you want to get married. That doesn't work because marriage only works one way. You have to give something, not simply not take something. Further, you said with the benefit of a loan, okay, which the Gemara will talk about in a minute, but because she becomes betrothed. But nonetheless, don't do it. Because it smells of rivers. It smells of interest. Even though it's not actually interest, but it looks like you're making extra on the loan. Says the Gemara. Hani anos milva. this benefit of a loan. Hey, Chidaki, what are we talking about? If it means that the man originally lent her money and he fixed interest payments upon her. In other words, he's charging her interest without a het to isker. Da'amala arba b'chamisha, repay the 4 coins with 5, and now he's allowing her to keep the 5th coin for Kiddushin. Her ribis malu. This can't be because that's actual ribis. That's not evading ribis, right? That's actual ribis. Va'oid hainu milva. Also, that's like betraying her with a loan. She owed it. He just didn't take back the 5th. Something Gemara, where he extends the time frame of the loan for her. He says, become betrothed to me with this benefit that you derive from having the loan extended.
So I think I missed
Since she had not previously possessed this benefit, it's a new benefit. The Kiddushin takes effect. Nonetheless, don't do it because it sure looks like ribis. Go ahead. What's the problem?
So there's 2 things. One, I thought it meant something different. I thought it meant someone didn't have money to Mekadesh, the person and the woman, and so they went to the bank and took out a loan and gave that money to her. Would that count? Because
That's his loan.
That's his loan. No, he took out a loan, but he has the money in his hand. He gives the money to her.
That's a marriage.
That's marriage. But then he still has to pay it back to the bank.
That's him. Yes.
Right. So okay, so that's what I said when you said you can't make this with a loan. I thought you meant
But it has nothing to do with her. She can still get married and it is good and she has no responsibility.
There's no responsibility to that loan. If you lend money, but
Right,
Ben, if you borrow the money from the bank and then you give it to your wife, and who does the bank come after? You or your wife?
She probably owes you. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah. She has no, it's a full.
It's a
validated
full
marriage.
yeah, exactly. That's not the issue here. The issue here is he gave her a loan.
But it smells.
First of all, he gave her a loan. And then he says, remember that loan I gave you? Get it. What he called, let's get married and you don't pay me the loan. On the benefit that you don't pay me the loan. No good. Because he didn't give her anything. He merely didn't take back his loan.
So what was the thing that it said it smells like ribbons?
That's when it's 4 to 5. Or he's extending the terms. The terms which he has to pay back to 1 year. Now he says you have 5 years to pay. So he just gave her 4 more years.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's really Kiddushin. Gave her a new benefit that has value, right? That has monetary value. But don't do it because it looks like rivers.
So let's say he does that now they're married. He says, now don't pay me back the loan.
That's something else. Once they're married, that's something else. Okay. Talking about the time of the Kiddushin. But here's the issue. It looks like rivers because it looks like you extended. She got a benefit. She got a benefit that wasn't there before.
But they would rather ksuba anyway.
That's a different issue.
You're saying that
Ksuba is not part of
That
the
could be
Kiddushin.
part of the ksuba.
No, ksuba is outside. You get married and you have a prenuptial agreement. The prenuptial agreement is not the marriage.
They usually sign it before the marriage.
Because you're not allowed to be married without a ksuba. But it's written, you could write whatever you want in the ksuba. As you well know, the ksuba today, for an example, is meaningless. Nobody even understands what it says. Further, Amar Rava, Halech Mana al Menashe Tachzrenili. Take this mana, okay? A mana is an ancient coin equal to 100 silver dinars. Okay, it was a nice amount of money. Al Menashe Tachzrenili on the condition that you return it to me. Amatana al Menas Lahas, Indian giving. B'mecha loikana. This does not acquire merchandise. Be'isha ein mekadeshes. By a woman, it does not mekadesh her. Pidyon aben ein benoy pidyon, and it will not facilitate the redeeming of the first son. Betruma yotzi yedei nesina. With regard to truma, if you give it as a conditional gift of this sort, it fulfills your obligation of giving the truma to the kohen. So the kohen gets it, and then he gives it back to the Yisrael. But nonetheless, you're not allowed to do it because it looks like a kohen who helps out on the threshing floors to receive truma in return. Because here's the reality: when you give it back to the Jew, the regular Jew, he can't use it. He can turn around and sell it to another kohen, but he cannot use it because once it became truma, it never loses its truma thing. Remember yesterday we said this? You cannot redeem teruma. Okay? All right, here we go. Says 6b3. We're just trying to get on to Zion. And that's where we're going to begin on Shabbos. Let me see where we're going to. I think we're going to Tain Mona Laploini. Yeah, that's where we're headed to. Mike Sabarava. What did Rabba maintain over here? Like I said, a gift on condition that you're going to return it is considered a gift. I feel that even the rest, Kiddushin and redeeming a firstborn, it should be valid. The Iksava loy shmei matana. I feel a bit truma nami loy. It shouldn't even work for truma. Void v'harova hu matana manas shmei matana. It is Rabba that says that a gift that's given conditionally is nonetheless a gift. The Rabba, which we and we rely on this for Sukkot. Heilach esrog zeh menashe tachzili. Take this esrog and use it to be mekayim mitzvah of lulav and esrog on condition that you return it to me. Not like the guy takes it, uses it, shakes it, lulav and esrog, the chazra and then gives it back. Yatza, he's yatza because you need from yours. It is yours. At the moment that you shook the esrog was yours. Now you have to give it back afterwards. That's fine. The imlav lo yotza. And in fact, if you don't return the esrog, then it turns it's an esrog agoizel. It's a stolen esrog. Elo Rabashi. So you see that Rava holds that you may fulfill the obligation of that lulav and esrog even if the esrog has to be returned. It means it's a real gift. So then, how are we to understand Rava's first statement that a conditional gift does not facilitate marriage or sales of merchandise or redeeming of a first son? In all these cases, in fact, the conditional gift affects the transaction except for a woman's Kiddushin. Why? A woman is not betrothed with Chalip. What's Chalip? When you go to sell the rabbi your chametz, what does he do? He takes the pen and he says, lift it up and then give it back to me. Right? It's just a show of, what do you call it? She says, that's the way you're going to marry me? Really? What am I? A piece of chametz? Right? That's exactly it. Sagt die Gemara, Amalei Rav Huna ma bereder Rav Nachem le Rav Ashi, ha'amim mishmei de Rabba kabasei. So we reported it in the name of Rabba just the way you just said it. Now we got one more just to get on to the next stop. Amar Rabba, tain mana laplaini, give money to so-and-so. Ba'kadosh l'chan, I will become engaged to you. 7A1. Okay, and then if the man gives money as specified, mikudeshes b'din orev. The woman became betrothed to him through the principle of a guarantor. Here, what does that mean? Orev, a guarantor and a loan. Lav. Even though he does not personally receive the benefit of the money lent. Nonetheless, he's bound to pay back the loan. If the guy who did get the loan doesn't pay, it is the same with the woman. Even though the no didn't come directly to her head, because she said, give the money to the second person. She nonetheless bound herself and gave herself over as a wife. Further, the second one, and this is where we stop. If a man appointed an agent, a shliach, to engage a woman, but the agent used his own funds to carry out the transaction, he lost the money, let's call it that, of the original, the guy wanted the groom, the potential groom, and he lost money, so he uses his own money. And he says, take this money, and become engaged to Reuven. She becomes betrothed to him through the principle of an Evet Kanani. What does that mean? An Evet Kanani is emancipation. Evet Kanani, la, is it not? Even though he does not give anything up of his own in the transaction, doesn't he acquire himself as a free man when others come and redeem him? Does he go free if some third party comes and redeems him? Yes, he does. If John Brown should show up and redeem him with money, right? He's redeemed. The slave, didn't do anything to redeem himself. Doesn't matter, he's still redeemed. Hi Gavranami, the same true for this man with his agent. Even though he didn't give anything up in the Kiddushin transaction, because his money wasn't used. He nonetheless acquires this woman as his wife because and that's the reality of it. Very good. This is where we're up to. Now, I have a little book here. Wait a minute, Jeff. Everybody listen. Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday of the upcoming week, unfortunately, there's not going to be, I'm not going to be around to give the daf yomi.
Tuesday,
and Thursday. Monday morning, I'm flying to New York. I have a chasana Monday night. I'm flying back Tuesday, actually. I'm flying back Tuesday morning. It happens to be, I could learn the daf yomi, and I would love to, an hour before mincha. I have no problem on Tuesday. So if you're all up to that, I'll send out a text. If you're up to learning, I'll be back here by 10 o'clock or 12 o'clock, back in Boca on Tuesday. I can certainly give the shiur on Tuesday evening. Okay? So David, okay? Ben?
I'm in Chicago.
Okay, but I'm just saying, but it'll be on the week. I'm going to speak to Matthew. Thursday, I am flying early in the morning with my granddaughter to Texas, seeing a doctor, and flying right back. So I'll be back Thursday night. Nonetheless, you got to figure that I'm going to be a mess. So in reality, we're going to do Monday and Thursday. Definitely there's not going to be a shiur. Tuesday, there should be a shiur. There's no reason why we shouldn't have a shiur, but it'll have to be in the afternoon. Okay? And I will
build your frequent flyer points. That's all.
And that's it. The problem is Delta is getting real expensive. I don't have to tell you. So even though I got a bunch of points with Delta, when you do these things and you're flying around like a chicken without a head, you can't always use it. You go look for your cheapest flight because all of these flights are 2.5 hours. So the reality.
Did you find on Thursday maybe Ellie Rose got a something in Florida?
It's funny. I texted with Ellie Rose last night. The truth of the matter is, I have used Ellie Rose, and of course they don't ask for money whatsoever. But nonetheless, I don't have to tell you the check that I obviously must have given him. Okay, you get the idea. Number two, if my granddaughter is strong enough to fly commercial, I don't really want to use Hatzola's planes for that. The only time I used Hatzola's plane to fly her was when we had to get from point A to point B, and we didn't feel that she was safe enough at that point to fly. What do you call it? And then I paid for the plane. To be honest. Okay. Last year, if you remember, I went to Cincinnati, and since I took one plane to Cincinnati, I chartered a plane from Cincinnati to the Boca Airport over here. And it was wonderful, except for the amount of money, of course, that the whole thing cost. So Baruch Hashem, in 1 or 2 flights, I covered all my Meiser for a bit of time. Let's just leave it at that.
Talk to Moshe Wessler.
I do. I have to talk. You know what? When I'm down here again, you'll introduce me to Moshe Wex. I've never been introduced.
Moshe had the bris. Moshe had the bris on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday night, he already was in Boca.
He was already in Boca. So I do have to talk to Moshe. You guys have to introduce me to him. If for no other reason, because in a pinch, there are times, as you know, we have to move, and I'm in desperate need of a plane.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Have a wonderful Shabbos, Jerry. When are you heading down to us?
We're actually starting to drive Sunday. We'll end up, we have a friend of ours' 95th birthday in Cherry Hill, so we're doing that. We'll be in Washington, D.C. on Sunday night. Monday night we'll be in South Carolina. So by Tuesday night we are in.
All right, so maybe Tuesday, if I give the shear in the evening, you might be able to make it actually.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you're not sleeping, if you're not falling asleep.
Okay, Tigers, a good
Yeah,
Shabbos.
but you're a young guy. He's
Bye-bye.
a young guy. So he did let a good Shabbos, everybody.